Maneco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I often get asked about what are my top 10 books, what are my favorite books, and today I've decided to do a video about my top 10 books, mainly about economics, money, markets, and a little bit of philosophy. And I actually have 11 books. I try to pick the best 10 that I thought people need to know about, but it has to be 11. But it's going to be a top 10 with like an extra, so to speak. We're going to start with The Law by Frederic Bastiat. It's one of my favorites, and it's more about philosophy, but it's also about economics, about politics. And it was written in the 1850s, and very little has changed. I highly recommend this. And it's called The Classic Blueprint for a Just Society. And we need a lot of that today, don't we? A new blueprint, I would say. Actually, old, very old, but a new in relationship to what we're seeing today. Walter Williams said, "The law created order in my thinking about liberty and just human conduct." So there you go. The second one is A Pocketbook of Gold, a survival manual for monetary mayhem by Jim Sinclair and Peter Carlin. And these are in no particular order of importance. I'm just taking them out of the pile I have here. And I highly recommend this as well. Jim Sinclair was called Mr. Gold in the 70s and early 80s. He knows a lot about the markets and money and banking. And this is a gem, another gem. Third one is more about trading and markets, but it's also about the life of Jesse Livermore. So Jesse Livermore, World's Greatest Stock Trader by Richard Smitten. Even people who are not interested in markets or economics will enjoy this book. It's really the biography of Jesse Livermore, and the author has actually done a lot of interviews with Jesse Livermore's family members. So highly recommend it. The real life story of the reminiscences of stock operator legend. The other thing I would say about this book, it shows you how tough trading is, and you will see what I mean if you read this book. Well, one of the books that really opened my eyes to the central banking system, to the Federal Reserve, to the fact that the Federal Reserve is not really a government entity, but a monopoly or a trust, a money trust, as Charles Lindbergh Sr., the congressman from Minnesota back in 1913 said about the Federal Reserve Act. It's the creature from Jekyll Island. I think this is one of the classics about the Fed by G. Edward Griffin. Highly recommend this. It's almost like a Bible about the Federal Reserve, I would say. What has government done to our money? The Case for a 100% Gold Dollar by Murray and Rothbard. Yeah, this is, again, a really good book. I think it should be taught in every school. For school children should read this book. It's not a difficult book to read. It is an economics book, if you want to call it, but it's written for the average person out there. The main thrust of this book is that it shows you, by doing the regression theory analysis, what money really is. And I won't say any more, but I think if you really want to understand our current monetary system, and I say that because we don't really use money, when you will see when you read this book. So yes, what has government done to our money? The Tower of Basel by Adam Lebor. I spoke about this book recently in one of my videos, but I would say if I had to choose 10 or 11 books, and I couldn't choose any more to take with me if I had to flee the country, and I could only take 11 books. They would be the ones, and this is one of them. It's about the shadowy history of the secret bank that runs the world. Yes, the Bank for International Settlements. This is not really a book. It is in book form, of course, but it's a series of letters by someone I didn't know about up until a couple of years ago when I first bought this book. And it's a guy who was actually a friend of Thomas Paine. He was a British from a farming family in Surrey. He became MP, and his name was William Cobbett. And he was even put in prison because he used to write a journal, and he wrote about a mutiny that the British soldiers did in this country, in the UK, and he criticized King George III, and he was put in prison for about a year or two, and he wrote a series of letters to his followers, and this is what it is, and it's entitled Paper Against Gold, containing the history and mystery of the Bank of England, the funds, the debt, the lowering and the raising of the value of paper money. I mean, it's a gem. It's a little bit difficult to read because they copied the letters, and it's like old, relatively, I guess, Old English. The grammar is a little bit different, the way they used to express themselves back then, but along with The Creature from Jekyll Island and another one that I have here, it's a must read if you want to understand how the bankers and the central banks work. This is really, really highly recommended, I would say. This was recommended by Jim Sinclair because I've been following his blog for about 20 years, jsmindset.com. And I remember years ago, he said, you need to read Our Crowd if you want to understand the Federal Reserve and who's behind it. And yes, very good book too. It says, The Great Jewish Families of New York, the #1 bestseller by Stephen Birmingham. And this was written in the 60s. So you will see the families behind the Federal Reserve when you read this. When Money Dies. And I've referred to this book quite a bit recently because of all the inflation that we're having. And this is, of course, about the hyperinflation during the Weimar Republic by Adam Fergusson. The important thing to take from this book, I would say, is to learn about how life was back then. And you can kind of look at life today and you can see the similarities. You can basically learn about the symptoms of a hyperinflation. And as I've said many times before, these symptoms are getting more and more, how can I say, prevalent in our current day. Fiat money inflation in France, it's one of my favorites, really. Of course it would be. It's in my top 10 list. But really, really one of my favorites. And this book has helped me understand what was going to happen even way back in 2002 and 2003. And this is when I read this book. So Fiat Money Inflation in France, how it came, what it brought, and how it ended by Andrew Dickson White. And it's all about the revolutionary period in France in the 1790s, how they started issuing paper money, the assignats and the mandats, and how eventually it led to the collapse of paper money because they abused the power to issue that paper money out of thin air. At first, they thought, oh, we'll just do one issue to kickstart the economy. But every time they did an issue, the economy improved, but then it went downhill, so they kept doing it. And it reminds me a lot of what's been happening for the last 20 years in the West. So not very long read, but highly recommend it. So yes, those were my top 10. And the next book, the wild card, so to speak, the number 11. And the reason I made it number 11 is not to do with the fact that I don't really think it should be in the top 10. It's just the way it is. And it's actually the book that changed the way I think about the purpose of government. It changed the way I think about the individual and the free market, and actually money as well, because in this book they touch upon inflation, socialism, and yes, it's a big book. It's a very interesting story. Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I highly recommend it. Do I agree with everything Ayn Rand talks about? Not 100%, but the general idea that the best way to have prosperity basically is to leave people alone, and to make sure that people's property and people's physical being are protected by the rule of law, and that the fact that socialism or communism always fail because it's a coercive philosophy, while freedom is not coercive, of course. And yes, this really changed the way I saw the world. And this is back in 1999, 2000. And even before that, I was pretty much an advocate of small government and free markets. But this book really helped me be a lot more discerning about people's intentions, especially politicians, the media. So I highly recommend that. I would say I would read this one first and all the other ones later on. This is a really good base. It will give you a really good base, I hope. So there you go. That's my top 10 plus one book list for market, money, economics, and philosophy. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you share it far and wide, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my videos. And with that, I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.